Hey there, this is Matt with the digital product team at Crew. I want to take a few minutes just to talk about the process our product team has been in over the last couple of months in building 4 tools designed to help the mission of Crew reach its goals. So we've been laying some tracks over the past couple of months, and sometimes it's confusing when you're seeing the build process happen because you don't know, are the tracks going in the right direction? Are they actually going to meet up in the right place? So as a product team, we want to take a few minutes just to look at where we're at with 4 of our major products. I want to do a little bit of kind of onboarding into this presentation because there's a couple different ways in which we're going to visualize what we have, who it serves, is there any potential overlap in value. And what you're looking at here is a 5x3 grid kind of laid out in a 3D fashion. Along the x-axis, we have what we're calling the scale of belief. And there's a couple of different teams within the global digital strategies as well as the digital products and services team that are using the scale of belief. Sometimes we use different words across the x-axis, but for this presentation, we're just going to use the 5 that the Mission Hub product is using currently. You'll see there's uninterested, curious, forgiven, growing, and guide. And those relate to how a person is kind of thinking about Jesus, thinking about following Jesus and being a part of his mission. Along the y-axis, we've got the scale of motivation. So you'll see a low, medium, and high. And that is a person's personal motivation and how closely it matches up with the motivation of our organization and the mission that we're called to be about. Now, there's 3 intersections here, which, just from my personal perspective, I think they probably don't exist. Like for a guide, that's a person who's discipling somebody else. Can a guide really have low or no motivation? I don't think that's possible. So what I'm going to do for this presentation is I'm just going to erase 3 of those grids just to make it a little bit simpler in terms of who our real users are. So what you're looking at is kind of the plane of engagement, I'll call it. All of our products are made for users. Hopefully we're serving our users well. Hopefully we understand what they want, what they need, how we can provide value to them. So there's one plane of engagement for the initiating person. But these 4 products that we're going to talk about, none of them are made to be used by yourself. There's always an initiating person and a receiving person involved. So we kind of have 2 planes of engagement that are relating to one another. So we have people in different parts of these grids relating to and interacting with and initiating with other people in other parts of the grid. So it can get a little bit confusing when we're talking about this. So we wanted to find a simple way to visualize that. A little bit more onboarding. When I color in one of these squares, what we're saying is the product is made or designed to give value to a user in that place. So here we're looking at a highly motivated guide. So the product is made to serve them. And then down in the receiving grid, we can see that that highly motivated guide is able to interact with or use the tool to initiate with a person in the forgiven category that has kind of a medium motivation. All right. As well, the same person can be interacting with multiple different people on that grid, and so sometimes we'll often highlight multiple intersections. You also notice sometimes that the color kind of fades out. What we're symbolizing there is that while the tool can be used with that type of person, it's not necessarily made at the core level for that person. All right, one last piece of onboarding. Sometimes you'll notice that the receiving person grid grays out, kind of fades out. What we're showing there is that while the tool still serves that relationship and connection between an initiating person and a receiving person, that when the grid is grayed out, it means the receiving person actually doesn't have to interact with the tool, doesn't have to use the app, doesn't even maybe know that that service exists. And so the tool is really designed for the initiating person to then off platform or off service to go relate and initiate with those types of people. Okay, so we got that. Are we ready? What we're going to do is walk through the 4 different tools and look at how they lay out with these different planes of engagement. So let's start with Mission Hub. See what God will do. Here are 2 planes of engagement, the receiver on top, the initiator on the bottom. And as we fill in the top grid, we can see that Mission Hub is now made really to serve any Christian. Whether they're low motivation, high motivation, Mission Hub gives them simple steps to take with those they care about. So Mission Hub is kind of acting as a very low risk, easy point of entry for a person to start taking steps of faith. And that way we can think of Mission Hub really as a send tool. If we think about the largest abstraction of our data construct, right? We have win, build, and send. And so Mission Hub is kind of sitting in that send category of mobilizing people and giving them practical things to do with those in their life. When we look at the receiving grid, we've got color across the whole thing. And what we mean there is that with Mission Hub, you can actually think about, pray about, take steps of faith with anybody in your life, no matter where they exist on this plane of engagement, no matter what their motivation or their scale of belief. As well, you'll notice that the plane is grayed out, and so the receiving person doesn't actually know about Mission Hub, have to use it, have to interact with it. We're just serving that initiator and letting them do what God wants them to do. So the key behavior, you'll notice that black arrow going from the top to the bottom. The color grids on top can interact with any of the color grids on the bottom. That key behavior that we're looking for and measuring in Mission Hub is a completed step of faith. We're excited when somebody downloads. We're excited when somebody puts a friend on the path. We're excited when they accept a step. But when Mission Hub works, they're completing that step and seeing God work. And the frequency that we would like to see that happening is in that weekly rhythm of faith. Lastly, for Mission Hub, we want to look at what's the population size of that dark colored top grid. How many people are we actually talking about in those 6 quadrants? So what we did was we took data from the CIA fact book, from Pew Research and Barna Research, and looked at the most friendly population that might want the value that we're giving. So what we're not talking about with any of these tools when we talk about market size is actually creating a market. We're just at first trying to respond to the potential market that is there. We're also just talking about the US because that was the most accessible data. I want to say that many of our tools already are serving a global audience, and we want all of our tools to be serving a global audience. So these numbers will be larger as we begin to research and understand different parts of the world. So for Mission Hub, when we look at the US population, if we narrow that down to evangelical Christians who have a smartphone, we're looking at a population size of 9.5 million people that we could potentially serve just in the US on that top engagement initiation plane. So that's Mission Hub. Focus about kickstarting life-changing conversations. So if we look at the 2 planes of engagement and our initiators, we're specifically looking at an audience of 15 to 24-year-old Christians. We want to help them talk about their faith for the first time. So while highly motivated guides and highly motivated people who are growing can use Vote, you'll notice that we're stretching down deeper into that place, medium and low motivation for Christians, because we want to make it simple, relevant, helpful, normal for them to start spiritual conversations. With this product, we're actually looking at a very lightweight win tool. So if we look at the receiving side, you'll notice that while there's color across the whole grid, we're really more narrowly focused in on kind of that forgiven and curious, highly motivated, uninterested person. So we're imagining a young Christian, never maybe even had a spiritual conversation or shared their faith with a friend, being able to use this app to reach out to another friend who's maybe curious, maybe uninterested, but willing to talk. So the key behavior for Voc is a conversation initiated. The whole promise is about kickstarting life-changing conversations. So we want to be easy and simple to do that initiation. Love to see a weekly frequency for Voc. And as we look at that US market size, evangelical Christians with a smartphone in this age range, we're looking at a population of 2.6 million people. Okay, so that's Voc. Let's move into God Tools, which helps you share your faith. If we lay out our planes of engagement and look at the initiators, we can see that Voc really highly specializes in a group of people that are willing and want to have focused conversations about the gospel. God Tools helps you give a clear gospel presentation. It's available in many languages of the world. It's also connected to follow-up pathways. Bread and butter crew. This is a win tool that sits alongside you when that conversation is ready to be had. When we look at the receiving plane, it's really made for people who are open, willing to have that gospel conversation, to be brought to a point of decision. It's given to them in a beautiful way, easy to understand, and really in a way that supports the conversation. It doesn't interrupt or disrupt the conversation between these two people. It really is meant to kind of sit there between them and support. You also notice that the receiving plane is grayed out, which symbolizes that God Tools is really made for the initiator, the person up top, not necessarily designed to be downloaded or used for the person being shared with. So the key behavior for God Tools is a spiritual conversation. As you set the environment, ask the right questions, come to that point where you ask your friend or the person you're sitting next to on the bus, do you know what it means to follow Jesus? Do you know what it means to have a relationship with God from a Christian perspective? Can I share with you? God Tools comes in, slides in that moment. So the cycle of frequency that we're hoping for at the beginning is really kind of a monthly rhythm. Could users of God Tools have one of these conversations a month? That would be pretty amazing. Now, as we look at the US market size, this is where we're still digging into the research, but how we came up with this number of 500,000 in the US is looking at that population of evangelical Christians, 9.5 million, 10 million people. And we asked the question, what percentage of those people are having on a monthly or yearly basis this type of focused spiritual conversation that might lead to a decision? And different points of research that we're still confirming, but from what we can tell, between 1 to 5% of that population is doing that. And so if we were to serve the population, currently that'd be about 500,000 people in the US alone. Now, God Tools is being used powerfully all around the world. And so we know that this market is definitely larger. The opportunities to serve is definitely larger. We're still gathering that data. But this gives kind of a comparison between tools. Highly specialized, very focused, very powerful tool for that moment where you want to challenge a person to make a decision. Okay, the next tool we're going to talk about is MyCrew, the MyCrew app. It's built on the glue technology. Grow anywhere. That we don't have to be face-to-face to grow, to keep growing together. So if we look at our planes of engagement and the initiator, what we're going to talk about is currently how we're designing the growth journeys within Glue, within MyCrew, who they're designed for, and who to be used with. And so with MyCrew, there's a very clear commitment to champion the growth of another. Now, this isn't like just starting a conversation. This is actually committing to taking a person and going with a person somewhere. Now, that could be on a growth journey that's a few days, a few weeks, or a few years. But it's a commitment to give of yourself, to have a vision, to have a process, to have a plan for a person's growth, and really take your energy and add it to them such that they can grow. So very clearly, this is in that how we're using it right now in that kind of build part of the framework of win, build, and send. So if you think about who this is serving down below, it's really anybody who is open or willing and wants to grow. There's deeper commitment here, and we're actually excited about that there's a little bit more friction to the commitment in terms of who to do this with. But it can be done anywhere. We don't have to be face-to-face. We don't have to be together. And the real value for the receiver is that my work and my progress, my growth can be recognized by the person that's championing me, and really in real time and right time can continue to be extended and expanded in the way that's best for me. So we think about that key behavior, there's really a connected journey that we're thinking about. We're still drilling down into what's that one key metric of what this relationship would look like that we want to support. We're thinking on a weekly basis, how do you help me grow? How do you champion me forward? And if we looked into the research on the U.S. market side within that evangelical population, we found that there are about 2.5 million people that say that they are kind of discipling another person. They are taking steps and actions to help somebody grow. And there's 2.9 million other people who have said that they're a part of some group or relationship where they're being discipled. So it's exciting that there's some action within that population of 9.5 million people that is already experiencing that can be served. And we can see from there to continue to grow that market larger. So how do we kind of lay these out together? I want to do a 2x2 just to kind of lay out the different tools. From the left side to the right side, what we kind of have on the left side are services. They're products built for me that help me reach out to other people. But the people that I'm reaching out to don't actually have to be or aren't on the product. Now on the right side though, we have more platforms where both myself and the person I'm reaching out to are both kind of experiencing the products. We have to think about two sides of the relationship and two different types of users. As we look at top to bottom, we have a continuum of kind of light investment and deep investment. And what we mean by that is light investment is I could grab the tool and experience the value with very little effort and very little commitment. Doesn't take me much time to actually do the thing that the product is made to help me with. Versus deep investment, to experience the full value of what it's made for, there's a lot more commitment on my part. There's a lot more energy to get me to that right place. And there's a sense of it being also extended over time that's a cost to me. It's a deeper investment that I have to make to continue to experience that value. So if we take our tools and we just look at the light investment across the service platform continuum, we have Mission Hub and Voc. Mission Hub acting as a service, Voc acting as a platform, but simpler, lighter weight that I can take and use immediately and experience that value and start making progress. Versus if we look deeper into the investment, we have God Tools as a service, My Crew as a platform, where there's really some unique environments where we need deeper investment and engagement. So if you think about that God Tools spiritual conversation, where you're really bringing somebody to a point of decision, where you're going to kind of challenge them to say, do you want to be prayed to be filled with the Spirit? Do you want to pray to follow Jesus? Like, these are life-changing conversations that can happen in the moment, but they also can happen definitely over time. But it's emotionally deeper. It's a faith-wise deeper investment. On the My Crew side, if I were to ask you and say, would you champion my growth? That's something you'd have to think about, because you can't just do it like one time. It's something that you're going to need to be committed to, and I'm going to needing to commit to you to do over time. So that deeper investment. And then if we look at left side, we have things that are clearly services that are just made for one user to reach out. Mission Hub and God Tools, as I already explained. And then on the platform side, Voc, though it's serving two people, both sides of the relationship are interacting with the product, VOC is a lighter investment in terms of what it takes versus my crew, a deeper commitment. And this is what we have mapped out all together. So couple of the questions that our product team is wrestling with as we listen to the intent of our leaders and the goals, vision of our organization. It's like, what does our mission require? If we're true and honest, not just to the mission that we've been called to do, but also the scope at which we are believing God to do it at, or do it in, what's the requirement that we actually have to have both the breadth of coverage and the depth of engagement? And the next question is, what is it going to actually take to continue with these things? I'll tell you, within DPS, both at a user side as well as a technology side, the conversations are continuing in terms of what is it going to take to support these four in a world-class way that we feel confident to scale around the world, as well as how do we build the technology that undersits each of these in a way that is synergistic and not duplicative. But for our conversation here, talking about the user side and the user value and what that value does, there's definitely a diversity of opportunity that we have here to serve, to mobilize, to equip, to release, and to send out to minister to those in their life. Okay, I hope this is helpful. My desire is that this both helps you understand, again, what we have, and each of these four things we have now. All four are being used actively. Users are experiencing the value and doing. Our motivation is connected to their motivation and really reaching people. Also want to give you an opportunity to think more deeply about not just what we have and who we're serving, but is there any overlap here? Or is this actually the breadth and depth and scale at which we need to have value to offer, not just to crew, but to the global body of Christ? All right, thanks for taking a few minutes with me. You can reach me at matthew.watts@crew.org if you have any questions or comments or observations, and look forward to talking about this more. Thanks a lot.